In this video, I'll be showing you guys how I sew my dresses. A plain Mennonite cape dress. This has been requested by a couple of you, otherwise I probably wouldn't be making this video. But before we jump into the video, I want to show you something. Do you know what turns a 2-year-old boy automatically into a 5-year-old boy overnight? Xander. Xander, come here. Did you get a haircut? Look at you. Did you get a haircut? How old is Xander?
2.
You're 2. Yep. Good job. Give mommy a fist bump. Boom. La 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 la. So I finally gave Xander a haircut. If you're new here, I'll quick show you a picture of what he looked like before. I kind of liked his mop of hair. And I just wanted to throw some pictures in. A few weeks back, I went outside and I found him stuck in a mud puddle. He was yelling for me to come help him out. He was stuck and couldn't get out. Kind of a muddy, manure puddle out in the pasture. Anyway, we got him out, but he and the dogs were so dirty and I just could not resist grabbing my camera and getting pictures. So, here's some pictures of Xander when he was all muddy and dirty out with his dogs. That was his haircut before, and now this is his haircut after. Say, you look so much bigger. I want to clarify one thing first. To all the seamstresses out there, please be easy on me. Long story short, I am mostly self-taught. My mom gave me a few tips when I was younger, and then when I got married, I finally started making my own dresses. I practically taught myself from what I couldn't figure out. So I know there's a lot of things that I do that probably technically aren't how I'm supposed to do them. And it's not exactly my first love, sewing, but I will show you a quick rough overall how I sew a dress. And I wanted to do a quick overview of the dress I'm wearing right now. So I am adjusting my pattern right now. I've been sewing a couple dresses already before this video. And I wanted to take the fullness out of my sleeve, like the gathers. I did that with this. This is one of my first dresses. I tried it. And as you can see, right across my shoulders here, it's pulled tight. Like my arms are filling out the sleeve. So this dress, I wasn't completely happy with how it's fitting. So I had to extend my shoulders, but now my sleeves aren't fitting correctly, and I've struggled with this with pretty much since forever. I don't think I'm putting them in correctly, and my sleeve pattern's wonky. They feel twisted. And anyway, long story short, I have a new pattern I'm trying today, and I'm really hoping that it'll fit much better. Okay, before we start sewing, I wanted to quickly just go over the basics of a dress. So, if I back up here, the type of dress I wear, we would call it a cape dress, a plain cape dress. So the cape would be the part that is sewn over top. It's a loose piece of fabric, sewn over for a little bit extra modesty. It's sewn in at the neck and at the waist, down here. But the rest is loose, and then we hem the side. So we call it a cape dress. It's not that we're superheroes or anything. Trying to make a joke about wearing a cape. Anyway, never mind, lame joke. So we have a couple of main parts. We have the sleeves, and then we have the bodice, which would be the part right here, the cape, and the skirt. And I will be showing you how I put everything together. Also, I wanted to point out that my specific pattern has what we call darts. It's just sewn in a little bit here up at an angle, so that it helps hold this a little bit better. Some people put them in their skirts as well, but I need a little bit more fullness than that. So for my skirt, instead of putting gathers in, I think these are called pleats. I think they're called pleats. I have them in the back, I have a little bit, and a little bit in the front to just give a little more fullness. Some people make them a little bit larger, some smaller, all give and take. How you prefer your pattern. Anyway, let's go. I first now need to go and cut out my dress. I'm going to be sewing this fabric. It's a little bit more of the stretchy knit. So I'm hoping it'll still fit okay. Sometimes this can be a little tricky to sew. Normally it takes me about 2 to 2.5 hours to sew a dress. That's not with the cutting out. And that's just for a basic dress. No fancy sleeve endings, no fancy things to the skirt. I'm not really a frilly type person, so I just like a basic straight dress. It's much faster to sew, and I do not have a lot of patience when it comes to sewing. So if it's gonna take me an hour or two just to figure out a cute sleeve ending, I just as soon would skip it. Anyway, so this is just gonna be a basic dress. If you want fancy things, I'm not the person to go to. So here goes. When cutting out a dress, you wanna make sure it's folded in half. That's usually how it comes. And you have a folded edge and you have a straight edge. So this is front and back. And depending on the design of your dress, you also want to be careful with how you cut it. Obviously, if the lines are going this way, you don't want lines going any which way. Okay, so this is my front skirt pattern. And on this side, it says to lay on fold. So I will be cutting it this way. All right, if you can see here, this is my cape back. So I would lay the one side on an open end for the zipper. So there's going to be two pieces for the back. Also on the cape and the bodice, all of these have this little angled piece so that I know where to start the dart. And then this dot right here, I put onto the dress so that I know that I'm supposed to sew this together down to here, like if it would be folded. I'll show you later, but just wanted to clarify that. This is now the back bodice. Alright, now I am cutting the back skirt. This can be a little tricky, especially if there's lines in the fabric so that the lines match up on your back seam. I'm not always the best at getting this, but super neat seamstresses will always make sure this happens. Next up, I have the front bodice, which I will be laying on a fold. I'm going to flip it this way. This is the front cape, which needs to be laid on a fold as well. The last thing I have here is the sleeve. There's a back. You need to make sure that this goes in the back. I think sometimes I forgot that. This is the front. And then right here is a little slit that I'll cut into the fabric. And that marks where I should have this line up with the shoulder seam on the dress. I have my Bernina sewing machine here, and then I also have a serger, which I really like serging a lot of my dresses. This is a knit dress. I technically wouldn't have to, but for the sake of the video, just for the fact that I have such a habit of serging, I'm probably still going to serge. My first step that I usually start with is I start with these darts, sewing them in. Cape front, back, bodice, front and back. So that's what I have. Right here, you can see I have that little clip. So I'm going to fold it right side to right side, and then I find the little dot that I marked, and I just make a seam from here to there on all the different bodices and capes.
A few moments later.
I have all the darts in. You can see right here the dart. And now I'm going to go and serge all the shoulder seams. Technically I wouldn't have to. I'm going to do that on all of these. Sergers are so much fun. Wide open. So if you don't have one, you really should get one if you can afford it. You can see the serge seam right there. And excuse my messy house. I'm doing laundry today, and I had to do a grocery run, so we just got back. Xander's in bed, so I'm trying to make the best of this time. I have a whole whack of dresses I want to sew before our upcoming trip in June, and I'm just so low on dresses. In case you haven't noticed, this dress appears quite a bit in videos. So it's high time I get some new ones. Alright, the next step is I sew my bodice front and back together and cape front and back together. And you only sew them right now at the shoulder seams. So this is my bodice with the armholes, and this is one of my bodice backs. So of course I put right side to right side, like lay right sides together. If you're a seamstress, you would obviously know this, which I'm sure if anyone is thinking of sewing a dress, they're probably a seamstress already. Unlike me, I'm not a seamstress, but I try.
A few moments later.
Alright, I have the seams together. This would be my cape. And it would be laying over like so, kind of ish. And now my next step is going to be, I'm going to serge this side, which would be my cape right here, so I can finish it and hem it. After that, I am going to run the iron and iron out all my seams. And then I need to iron this edge back so it's easier to sew. Now I know that real seamstresses would measure this, like to make sure that this is all folded back correctly, but I just guess. And I know a lot of people would probably fold this twice to make a proper hem, but I just fold it once. So don't judge me for... Now that I have the cape hem ironed back, I'm going to sew it down. Okay, once again, I'm going to go along and just press out my seams that I just sewed. The way that your cape and your bodice get sewn together is at the neck first and then down here at the waist. So how you do that is you have to take your cape and put it on the bottom, which I'll show you right here. Now this takes a little bit of remembering sometimes. Lay it face up, and then you want your bodice to be on top of this. So what happens is when we sew a seam around the neck, the bodice will get flipped up and go around so that obviously you won't see the seam and it'll be tucked underneath. So now the step is to pin this together. Make sure your shoulder seams line up. Try to get everything to line up as best as possible, and then we'll sew it. Ouch.
A few inches later.
Okay, now I am just going to go around and sew in the neck, trying to go carefully. Alright, now I'll take the pins out of the neck. The next step I'm going to do is to get it to lay straight. Now I'm trying to set a little bit more of a square neck instead of a round neck, so maybe this isn't quite as important. I'm not 100% sure, but I just snip a little bit on the seam to give it some flex when I'm sewing again, or to let it lay nicer, I guess. I'm sure all the seamstresses on here are laughing at me, but so be it. Alright, I have snips in the neck now, as you can see, hopefully. And the next step is to open this up, spread it out, your cape from your bodice, and you sew your neck, or you sew the seam down onto the bodice. I think this helps it lay nicer. And you want to stay with your second stitch very close to the first stitch that you put in. So that's what we're going to do now. So here's my bodice, here's my seam. So I pull this apart, lay it open.
A few minutes later.
Okay, the next step is to iron this out. So I flip my bodice behind the cape. I'm not really sure how to explain it, but you want to make sure you iron it nicely so that none of the seam from the bottom is sticking out, or the bottom piece, because it can stick out like that. I'm not sure if you can see that or not. Now that I have the neck in, I need to sew the sides together, like the zipper part, which would be here. Then I need to sew around the waist, just sew the cape into place so that when I actually put the waist in, it doesn't pull and yank the cape off. And the tricky part is in the front. You want to make sure that your cape is centered with your waist. So what I do is I just mark the center of the cape. I fold it in half, like so, and I know some people pin. I just make a little snip to mark the center, and then I do the same for the bodice. And then when I go to sew them together, I make sure the two center pieces are lined up.
Eventually.
And then the last step is I like to serge the zipper edge, which I'm going to do right now, and I think I'll just let you guys hear. The top part is finished now, except for the sleeves, I believe. So we are going to be tackling the sleeves next. The sleeves are the worst, my worst, most hated part of sewing. Now, if you remember when I was cutting this out, I was running really low on fabric, and so I cut a piece this way and just had an extra piece that I'm going to lay on and sew on this way. And I think I'm just going to do it, just hem it up and do just a straight, a straight sleeve. So for now, I'm going to sew the two pieces together, finish out my sleeve. Alright, next up I'm going to serge the seams and the ends for hemming once again. Alright, I'm just going to finish hemming the sleeve ends. So there is my finished edge. It still needs pressed down, which I'll do after I'm done with this one. I need to do a gathering stitch into the sleeve. Now, a gathering stitch is just a longer stitch, in case you didn't know. While this is a fitted sleeve, it still needs a gathering stitch to help it pull in nicely, we understand. So that's what we're going to do, just sew away. I want to make sure that I put my stitch back down to normal. I hate when I'm sewing and forgot to put the gathering stitch back and I'm sewing with these huge stitches. Remember how when we were cutting out the sleeve, there is a front and a back, and then there's a notch in the top to what needs to be centered. Now, a lot of people will pin, but I hate pinning and I'm so lazy. Once again, all you professional seamstresses, don't laugh at me because I do this way too much. And I'm kind of self-taught. Anything that makes it go faster, it doesn't really affect how it looks on the outside, is fine with me. So when I put my sleeve in, I will first sew on each side up to about here. And then from there, I will have it completely sewn in from how it needs to be. And then I'll know exactly how many gathers to put in to make that tight between here and here. Technically, I probably should pin, but I find it's easier this way. Then I can pull the gathers I need, line up my seam and so on. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Now I'll make sure I have the right sleeve. So this is the front, this is the back. I hate putting in sleeves. I hated it more when I had had a lot of gathers. But here we go. Okay, now I'm going to take my gathering stitch threads and just put some gathers into the sleeve. I hope you can see what I'm doing here. Alright, I'm at the place now where the sleeve and the shoulder seam line up. So now I'm just going to smooth out the rest of these gathers until it pulls to the same amount. It lays flat. In other words, probably not making a whole lot of sense here. I'm not exactly sure how to go about explaining it, but I just put in enough of gathers to make it so that each piece is laying like it should onto the next one.
One eternity later.
I am back and I have both my sleeves in and I have it serged, like the hem serge for the sleeves. So here, oh no. No. Oh, I hate when this happens. Look, I caught, always make sure you pull your dress out. I caught it. I caught the underside and sewed in. Can you see that? Now I have to rip. Come on, Janine. Okay. I did it to both sides. What is wrong with me today? Look at that. Can you see? Now I have to rip. Oh, and I thought I was on the homeward stretch. Come on. You've got to be kidding me. Wow. Okay, this hopefully didn't cut anything.
2,000 2,000 years later.
Okay, finally, I have it right. Here's my sleeve. Probably can't even see it that well. Now, I feel like I'm on the final stretch. I always like when I get to this part, I am going to sew the skirts in at the waist. So I put pleats into my skirt, like so. Try to line them up with the cape. So I'll start with the back. You want to make sure you have the right skirt. Skirt to the back of the cape and bodice. I'm going to start on this side at the zipper edge. Sew a little bit to get it in. Now I am going to pin these two sides together. I usually like not quite lining them up, because when I do that, it seems the top piece, the piece that I'm putting the pleat into, always ends up pushing out a little bit further. So I just like setting it back a hair. And then I go ahead, make the pleat into the skirt and line it up with the dress cape. I missed. Still missed. Whatever. Just do that way, see if I care. This stretchy stuff is so hard to sew. See, my pleat didn't quite line up with the cape corner. Off by a hair. Can you see that? But it's busy enough of a fabric. I'm not going to bother. I'm tired of sewing. I just want to go have coffee.
So much later that the old narrator got tired of waiting and they had to hire a new one.
Alright, I have everything serged and now we are on the home stretch. Still have the zipper to put in. That's kind of a especially with knit. I know some people don't even put zippers in with knit, but I usually do. I sew the side seams in last, so I start at the sleeve, put it together, and then we run the whole way down to the skirt on both sides. The tricky part could be making sure your waist lines up, different of the seams, but with stretch it's a bit easier to just stretch one side if it's not quite working out. Technically, it's probably not the best thing to do, but I do it, so. Okay, so I just thought of it as I was sewing here. Some people would wait to serge the side seams until the end and serge both skirts together. I personally do not like this because it makes it stand out like this, and then it lays on my hip and flares out more. I have been blessed with hips that live in 2 different zip codes. Ah, shoot. Anyway, that just cracks me up. I have a bit more, I put my weight into my hips, which I do not appreciate, but to help keep my skirts from just flaring right at the hips and making them even more pronounced, I like to serge my seams separately, and then when I iron them, I lay them flat so that it's not giving more bulk. Anyway, so I have this side sewn in. Now I need to do the other side. I tell you, I'm just not lucking out today very well. Totally missed that. This dress is just being a pain. Alright, now I am going to serge my side seams together down to the waist. Like I said, the waist opens up and lays flat, but to there I sew it. Serge it together. Now it is time to put the zipper in. Now this stuff has been giving me real struggles. It's hard to get it to lay flat, so it's easy to catch fabric underneath. I did it again on the one sleeve. When you put a zipper in to this kind, it tends to buckle, and then you have like this big hump on your back. Technically, the way to help avoid that is to put a gathering stitch into your zipper part of the dress and gather it slightly, and then as you're putting the zipper in, it's going to push those gathers out and lay flatter than if you didn't have gathers in, and it would kind of stretch and pull the dress. So when you put it on and the dress comes back to how it's supposed to be, the zipper buckles. Let's cross our fingers this actually goes in right, because I've been making so many mistakes on this dress today. It's getting a little bit annoying.
Maybe I am in a dream.
Alright, now I'm not quite sure how to go about and explaining how I put a zipper in. I know for a fact it's not the right way, I'm pretty sure. Because I taught myself. I went and when I was trying to figure this out, I just went and picked up an old dress and looked at it carefully, laid it a certain way, and it's how I figured out how to do zippers. So I have to switch out my presser foot, and I don't even know if this one is meant for zippers, but I use this little one, whatever it is, and then I can run this little foot right along the edge of the zipper. So I take my dress and put right sides together for the back of the zipper, and then I fold it out, and the zipper is supposed to lay on that. I know that's not the clearest of directions, but I'm not really sure how to tell you guys or why. But this kind of zipper is a hidden zipper, and so I fold right sides together, but then I open up that fold. And the reason I'm doing it this way is just because I taught myself, and this is how it looks when it's finished. So then I would lay my zipper onto that fold, like so I know how it actually goes onto the dress. You want to make sure it doesn't get twisted. This is how the zipper goes on, and I'm holding on tight. I'm going to start with this side. There's a little tab on the zipper where the zipper stops. I try to get that up as close as I can to the top. A lot of people would pin this, but I technically don't. I just put my presser foot, I should really zoom in here. I lay my presser foot right in tight against the zipper part, and I kind of hold it open. Now as I go along, I'm going to pull at these gathers a little bit. And another thing I do sometimes with this stretchy is just kind of push the fabric up as I'm sewing down. That way it's not stretching this way. That helps too. I guess slow and steady wins the race here. I'm going to get that needle in as tight as you can underneath the actual zipper part. See how I'm sewing the zipper on here? My presser foot was running along the inside of this with the needle right underneath, trying to keep this open so that I could get a stitch right along there as close as I could. Now this is another part where I'm not doing things correctly. I just kind of go by eye. So you want to try to make sure your neckline obviously lines up when your zipper is shut. So what I just do is I try to look and judge by eye. Sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. And just see about right where they fall. And then I'm just going to start a stitch. Ah, my goodness. Look at that. You see how far this is off of that? I'm hoping it shows up. I'm just struggling. Yeah, it needs to be closer to the top. Hello. There we go. Now we're talking. You see that? Those line up. Okay, so now my next step is to go down on the side that is sewed in and mark where my seam is for the waist on the back of the zipper. So I made a mark on the zipper where the waist is supposed to come to so that they line up in the back, because sometimes it can be a little bit tricky to get your waist seams to line up on the outside. Pins do come in handy here. Moment of truth. Let's see if our seams line up. I'm telling you, this stretch is a pain. I am not taking this zipper out. It did not line up. I have never had such a pain with a dress. Wow. Just wow. This kind of stuff bugs me. You see that? This is off by like a 1/8 of an inch maybe. If this was a solid dress, that would really stand out a lot more. Thankfully it's not, so it's not. I'm just gonna let it go. I am sick of ripping. I'm kind of tired of sewing. This is like my 3rd dress now. Sorry, I'll stop complaining here. I'm just not really in the mood to sew today. Now I'm going to sew the back seam. Now that's sewn in, I go back up to the zipper and I need to tack the ends down and sew them a little bit onto the seams. I need to just put the hem in and finish the zippers. A lot of people will tack this down, but someone told me you can just cut it off and it'll be fine, and I've been doing that ever since. So I just cut my zipper at an angle. Call that good. I'm done. This was not the most enjoyable time I've had sewing a dress, but if it fits like I'm thinking it is, like when I tried it on upstairs, I'm so happy. Here is my new dress. I will back up so you can see it better. Hopefully you can still see how it's fitting. I'm really happy with how it turned out. So if you see my new sleeves, they hang ever so much better, in my opinion. And I'm really happy with this new pattern, how it fits. If you're interested in purchasing dresses, I've had different people ask me where they can buy them. I'll have links below. So far I know of about one online store. I'm not sure if those are cape dresses, like with the cape piece, there's Mennonites that don't make those styles. Anytime I get more links, I'll add them down below. So if you want to check back now and then, maybe I'll have more links in the future. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. This was a much requested video. I probably wouldn't have made it otherwise, but you guys asked for it, so here it is. Thanks so much for following along. If you haven't subscribed, I'd love to have you join along. And that little bell button will let you know whenever I upload so you don't miss anything. So cheers, God bless, have a good day, bye.